Welcome back to the table. Today, Ryan and I are going to give you a look at Mythic Mischief Volume 2.
Yeah.
Yes, that is a mouthful. This is the second volume of Mythic Mischief, and it is a standalone kind of expansion, but it's a standalone game too. This is basically all of what you would expect in the original volume, but with a new theme, a new main board, and 4 new factions, but it can all be mixed and matched.
Yeah, these new mystics can be played with the old set, or the old ones can be played with the new set, because the core gameplay hasn't changed a ton, but it does give you more ways to interact with the game.
Yeah, so we want to give you a very brief overview of what you're doing in that game, but then we really want to kind of dig into the differences here with these factions in particular. But thematically, one of the big differences is you've got this new main board. It is the garden. It's got these hedge maze tiles instead of the bookshelves in the original that kind of like divide things up. And you've got the groundskeeper here instead of the tomekeeper.
Yeah.
But in both games, the groundskeeper or tomekeeper is going to be moving to these destinations. He's going to go from here to 1, then to 2, then to 3. And this is all variable setup. We're also going to have 3 students from our faction out on this board moving and manipulating the board. The goal here is to create mischief. And what is mischief? Well, it's the points we're trying to score, but it's also done by getting the groundskeeper, in this case, to capture or catch one of the opposing faction students.
Yeah, it's a very abstract game in that you're using your dice that are on your player board to take very specific actions. Yeah, all with that goal of actually manipulating this and making your own kind of hedge maze. Because as you're moving these hedges around, you're kind of directing where that groundskeeper goes with the express purpose of keeping him away from you and directing him towards your opponents. Of course, they're doing the same thing, so things are getting flipped and switched. The groundskeeper's moving, these hedges are all moving. Sometimes maybe even these destination tiles are moving. So there's a lot of mischief that's happening, a lot of hijinks happening on the board.
It's not called Mythic Hijinks, it's Mythic Mischief. It is mischief happening, and like the original game, this one too has sort of 2 phases. Once the groundskeeper gets to his 3rd destination, it's going to go from before dark to after dark. The original game was before and after lunch. This one's a little creepier.
And you could play them all in a row. You could do before lunch, after lunch, before dark, after dark.
A whole day of
mischief. Whole day of mischief.
But then you're going to flip this card over and get effectively a new map where you're going to change the positions of these destinations, potentially some other things, and then you play the 2nd phase. And the game's going to end when either faction gets up to 10 points. Now, the game revolves around these factions because all of that manipulation we were talking about has to do with how you do it with your faction. And everyone has some basic things, like you're going to be moving in a very basic way, but some people have some special moves. You're also going to be manipulating the hedges, maybe moving other mythics from the other factions so that you can really kind of move them off of their turn so you can get them in the way of the groundskeeper, because the groundskeeper is going to have his own phase where they move after each player's turn. But let's talk about the new factions and some of what makes them unique.
Yeah, so I've got the Gnomes. The Gnomes, they're pretty chill. They like to spend a lot of time hanging out outside. I will say that if any one of these factions went to Woodstock, it would probably be the Gnomes.
Let's put it that way.
I'll put it that way.
They're kind of the hippy-dippy faction of this
They are a little
volume.
bit, but the Gnomes are cool. They're little, actually very different in the way that they move. Like David said, you kind of have the same 4 basic abilities, but they're done in a different way. Everyone gets 2 moves. The first move that the Gnomes make is just a normal move like anybody else would take, but their second move, they actually get to go underground and kind of burrow and pop up in other spaces. So their movement is divided into 2 different sections. So you will need to power up each one, but the burrow movement is great. It lets you move 2 spaces, and that can let you crawl under hedges and pop up on the other side as well. They have a shift ability where they can shift with somebody adjacent. That's not their strongest ability. Their illusion, which is going to move around the walls, lets you move around a hedge that's adjacent to them to another location that's adjacent to them. They have the same distract where they can, make the groundskeeper look at them.
You kind of try to lure the groundskeeper on your turn as well, so you can kind of get them on or off course.
But their burrowing is one of their big things, and then they have 2 specials. Everybody has kind of a special ability and then an after dark ability. Their special is a potion they can drink to reset any one of their action dice. And that's huge because you can literally finish an action, drink the potion, and do that same action again.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
But, those special abilities are tough. You have to replenish them with these tome tokens that you can take off the board. Anytime you take a tome token, you can use it to power up one of your actions, or you can use it to replenish your special. So you're not going to be doing that a ton.
No, you do that like after you've taken your turn, there's a cleanup phase where if you've collected any tomes, you're able to sort of enhance your faction. So all the factions give you the opportunity to sort of like level them up and choose how you want to do that. This is not a game where you're going to level all of the things on your board all the way up, so you can kind of pick and choose.
Their After Dark special is pretty cool. It's called Uproot. It actually lets you move the destination token. So wherever, and you can do that once per turn. So you can kind of control where the groundskeeper is going.
That's pretty crazy.
I mean, that is pretty crazy.
That's just as good as moving the other faction, really.
Well, really, I think so.
Or maybe
yeah.
better.
Maybe but you can only do it after dark, so you don't get to do it the whole game.
So the next faction is the Werewolves. The Werewolves are kind of like the rockers, the punk rockers.
I'm picturing Teen Wolf
of
right
the
here.
School. Well, I mean, literally, they're teen wolves. But they have some different abilities too, and a lot of them seem to revolve around throwing things around and really creating havoc. One of them is Fling. You can take an adjacent ally or enemy and move them 2 spaces laterally, basically, up to 2 spaces laterally, which is significant. You can help other of your team or
throwing them out of the way.
Yeah, throw them out of the way. You can move through people in both versions of the game, but you can't occupy the same space at the end of a move. They've also got Heave. This lets them move any of the hedges orthogonally as far as they want in either direction. So this hedge could move all the way to here, or you could move it like this.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty crazy. Moving the hedges is significant because someone could be on a route and you could move a hedge and basically put them in a small little dead end, which is kind of crazy. They've also got a distract. Then they've got Full Moon. Full Moon lets them put this little marker on any one of their students, and then that student can use the Fling ability that I just mentioned, but throw them also over hedges, which you can't do typically.
So they're like super strong.
They're very strong, yes. And then their After Dark ability lets them, in an adjacent space, basically rip and shred through either a hedge or some of the rubble.
Oh, that's good to get rid of that rubble, too.
It just goes off of the board and out of the game.
All right, let's talk about the third faction. I've got the third faction right here. This is Fairies. These are kind of the class clowns, the hijinksers.
Yes.
They like to have a lot of fun. And people like them, and their abilities revolve a lot around controlling other people. What's cool here is they can actually, when they move a hedge, they can move it to somebody else. So they can just move a hedge that's adjacent to them to another player. They can spread out their pixie dust. This is their special ability that requires the cube. They can actually switch an opponent with the groundskeeper. So they can literally move the groundskeeper to the other side of the board if they wanted to. And their After Dark ability is this fairy ring, which allows them to actually control and kind of charm other players and move other players. So you can move your enemies directly into the line of sight of the groundskeeper. And they can do a little bit of that with their Wander as well. They can move allies or enemies with their move action instead, which is kind of cool. So they do a lot of manipulation of other pieces, for sure.
The last faction are the Gargoyles. The Gargoyles have an interesting backstory. They were once statues on the school grounds that were possessed by the Phrase, actually.
And now they are
And
debating.
now they're effectively the debate team of the school. So the Gargoyles are all suited up here and look like they'd be on a debate team. They have a couple extra unique moves, one of which is Glide. When they move, if they use Glide, they can take any ally or enemy that's not only adjacent to them orthogonally, but around them completely, even on the diagonals, and move with them laterally. So if this was a gargoyle and this was a character, I could move like this. They've also got Perch, and Perch lets them do effectively the same thing as Glide, but with a hedge. So if I wanted to move here and this was a gargoyle, I could move this hedge with me.
Ooh, that's nice too.
Which is kind of cool. I really like the abilities that allow you to kind of like manipulate the hedges. I mean, this game is all about manipulating this board, so all the different ways they can give you to do that is really cool.
It's interesting. I mean, they've balanced it in a certain way. Like characters or factions that are really good at moving hedges might not be as great at moving people necessarily. Sometimes you have really strong movement abilities that move yourself. Sometimes your focus is more on moving other people. So they have kind of built out very different asymmetric abilities into these factions.
And then the last one I wanted to talk about is their stone ability. They come with a special token that goes underneath one of them, so when you use the stone ability, the gargoyle turns into
makes
stone,
sense.
and then you cannot pass through that. No enemies, the groundskeeper,
Oh,
nothing.
not even the groundskeeper. So he just
they
stops.
turn into stone. So that is very thematic and very cool. They're after dark, special here. It takes an additional move for an enemy to enter the space of a gargoyle.
Oh, so they basically...
So they take up space.
Yeah.
So if you're moving through a gargoyle, it's going to take 3 moves.
That's
basically.
awesome.
So those are the 4 factions of Volume 2 of Mythic Mischief. Like we said, the gameplay is very similar, so if you're already a fan of the original, this is just going to give you more of that. Plus, I can't remember if the original had a robust solo mode, but this one has a solo mode as well. That we're going to be featuring here on the channel. I think Jeremy is going to do a solo, maybe a solo Sunday or some sort of solo stream for the solo play.
I like that you're in detention for solo mode. That's fun.
It is detention. And you might look for more content from us too. We might try to get this live streamed
I'd like
with
to.
a play.
Love to play
of
some
the
of these
full
new
game.
factions again.
But until then, if you have any questions, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer as much as we possibly can. And until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.